moves. There you go. So let's get going. A very, very warm welcome to everybody who is joining us today for our Live Well Live webinar. We're going to be talking all about weight loss around perimenopause and menopause today, because we know that this is a really important element for many women at this stage of life. And we really want to very much support you in your weight loss journeys. And we know that for some ladies in particular, that this can become a particularly challenging point in that whole weight loss journey. So, well, point makes it sound like it came and go really quickly, whereas it can be years of challenge content.
It can, it can.
Yeah, just to introduce myself, I am Ruth Taylor. I'm the nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor. I'm also a registered nurse and health and wellness coach, and spend a couple of days a week working with the Boots Online Doctor lifestyle medicine team, which I absolutely love. And also will sometimes see some of you on the Boots Online Doctor messaging service. Yeah, and we are so lucky to be joined today by Rupa. Big round of applause for being here.
Oh
Thank you
my
so much,
goodness. You,
Rupa.
you
Gonna
might not be
big you
saying
up.
that. I know a bit too much. You might not be saying that at the end of the webinar.
We will definitely still be saying it. So, Rupa, please tell us a little bit about yourself and
Uh,
what got you into this whole understanding menopause from a pharmacy point of view. What was that?
yeah. No, thank you for that really lovely introduction, Ruth. So I'm Rupa. I am a prescribing pharmacist for Boots Online Doctor, and my specialist area is the menopause. And I'm fortunate enough to lead this service with another GP, and I'm very passionate about it. And as Ruth says, it's a privilege for a pharmacist to be specializing in something like this. Because I think we need more pharmacists doing it to help out the GPs and to provide additional advice on medication, on HRT, medication, symptoms. So I'm trying my best to really encourage other pharmacists to get involved as well. But today, hopefully, provide some insight into a bit more around the subject and the area, and weight loss in general, and weight gain, and all sorts of different things that can help you with all of that. So looking forward to it.
Brilliant. We are really looking forward to it as well. So we're also joined today by Raman, who's part of the team at the Boots Online Doctor. Raman's here today really to help with any IT queries or to share any links that would be helpful for us to share with you. If you've brought along any questions, do pop them straight into the Q&A box. Or if they come up for you during the webinar, then don't hesitate to pop them in the Q&A box. If you can't find the Q&A box for any reason, then please do put them into the chat box and we will do our best to find them. Just to let you know, we have a couple of polls that we're going to be sharing with you today. So let's start by asking you what your weight loss challenges are in menopause. And for anyone who hasn't been on the webinars before, these are completely anonymous. We don't know who's answering what. We just get a flavour of what's going on for people in the audience. So please feel free to take part in the polls. It just helps us understand really how you're feeling, what's going on, what life stage you're at, whether you've got any particular challenges in terms of weight management and menopause. And then we can think about those in relation to talking to you today and making it as relevant as possible, because we really want this to be helpful information. So for us, this is quite helpful just
Yep.
to know, isn't it, Rupert?
Definitely. I
Yeah.
can see lots of different answers coming through.
Yeah, gosh. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
can see it's sort of 50-50. No, we got a three-way split. We got almost an equal split of people
Mm.
who are perimenopausal,
Yep.
menopausal, and postmenopausal, and some ladies or people who are uncertain.
hmm
So difficult. That can be really challenging to know where you are, can't it, Reaper, in
Yeah,
terms of that hormonal fluctuation and what's going on for you?
absolutely. And hopefully we can clarify that today.
Very much so.
And the priority is managing the weight.
Crikey, that is a massive priority. So
Mm.
for 95% of the people who've answered the poll, you are saying weight loss is your number one priority, as well as 36% of you reducing your symptoms, 53% improving your energy, and muscle, improving your fitness and your muscle mass. So thank you. That is so helpful. We'll bear all of that in mind when we're talking to you today. So
Yes.
I think you'll know by now, hopefully, that we run these webinars most Mondays. There are a few Mondays coming up in April and May where we have bank holidays. So what we're going to be doing those weeks is we're going to be running them as a trial on a Tuesday instead, just to see how that goes. And we did ask last week whether people would want to come on a Tuesday, and some definitely do. Others won't be able to manage it because of work commitments. But we're just going to give it a go and see how that goes. So, yes. Let's talk about this really important subject. Reaper, over to
Let's
you.
do it. Let's start. So the menopause is something, a word and an area of health that is talked about a lot, thankfully now. In the last 5 years, this has risen, and we are getting more women telling us about their symptoms, how they're feeling. But there's a lot of work to do yet in primary care and with all healthcare professionals to really help the patient themselves, and also make sure that they're managed properly with their symptoms. So the menopause, what the word meno means is monthly, and then pause obviously means to cease or stop. So this means, by definition, when you've not had a period for 12 months or more, you have reached the menopause, and then you are postmenopausal after that. So you're no longer having periods. And the average age in the UK is around the age of 51, but this isn't set in stone. It can be very much before that, or it can be after that as well. So I know women who are in their mid 50s still getting very regular periods. So 51 is just the average age itself. Um, and there's a whole host of symptoms. There's over 30 symptoms of the menopause, and they range from many, many different things. The classic ones are hot flushes, night sweats, joint aches and pains, poor sleep, mood changes, brain fog. So women who go to work complain all the time that their memory, their performance at work is affected by this brain fog. They can't remember people's names at work that they've worked with for ages. I've had that before. And you think, oh, crikey, I've known this person for ages. What's their name again? That's pretty scary. That's very scary. I remember I had a patient once who had a very high profile job. She was very good at it. She was in her 50s. She traveled on the motorway every day, very competent, very confident. And one day she got to the petrol station. She wanted to put petrol in her car, and she just couldn't understand the concept of how to put petrol in her car, and she panicked. And you would, wouldn't you? That's pretty scary to have that. So what she did was she got in her car, she phoned her husband. Obviously, he talked her through it. Um, but it's these little things that start creeping up or start happening that can be very, very scary. And sometimes, you know, when you explain this to healthcare professionals, they don't really, well, they understand, but they don't perhaps guide you in the right way. So it's really, really important that you do discuss your symptoms with whoever you go to get some help. Now, the perimenopause, this is the confusing stage. I call it the puberty of the menopause, and it's the transition stage leading to the menopause. Now, this is when it happens around your mid 40s, but it can happen quite before that as well. So it's when you can have very normal periods, or you can have changing periods, but you're still getting periods no matter what they're like. But on top of that, you're getting these menopausal symptoms, and that's the confusing bit because women think, well, I'm still having my periods. How can I be going through the change? But this is what's known as the perimenopause. Now, a lot of women ask, do I need a blood test for this? And the answer is it depends on your age. So if you're above the age of 45, you don't need a blood test. And that blood test is called FSH. And it stands for follicular stimulating hormones. So what it does is if you're above the age of 45, you don't need that test done because your hormones are fluctuating all the time and you're not going to get an accurate result. But if you're under the age of 45, there's still some consideration that your hormones are fairly balanced. And the guidelines are under the age of 45, you do need two FSH blood tests done 4 to 6 weeks apart. But if you do get a normal result and you're very symptomatic, you are diagnosed as being perimenopause or menopause. So that's very important because the menopause is a clinical diagnosis, not a biochemical one. And I always encourage women, and I'll put a link up towards the end that you can get a symptoms checklist which lists all the different menopausal symptoms. And I always encourage women to see their doctors, whoever they're going to, about their menopausal symptoms with that actual questionnaire or that tick sheet to show what they're suffering from, because that gives a healthcare professional lots of information about what you're suffering with, and hopefully lead you in the right direction. And of course, there's other ways that your ovaries stop working as well. So, um, surgically induced menopause. So, if you've had a total hysterectomy, that means you automatically just enter the menopause stage. There's something called primary ovarian insufficiency, or POI, and that normally occurs in women under the age of 40 for different reasons. It could be hereditary, but they actually do reach the menopause at that stage. The periods stop. Um, and also genetics. There's certain medication and medical conditions that can cause menopause, and also treatments such as chemotherapy.
Yeah, such a challenging stage for some people, and
Yep,
yeah, it's really great that you've mentioned that because I think it's often goes under the radar, doesn't it? And
it
people
does. It does.
get
Yep.
sort of thrown into this
Mm,
terribly difficult time
yep.
with very little preparation.
Yep.
So let's think about what happens in terms of why so many people struggle with weight gain at this difficult sort of transitioning time. So we know that the hormones related to regular periods really change, basically. So I liked your sort of teenage description of the perimenopause, Rupa, because I think that's really, really relevant and
Yeah.
very true
Mm,
because
hmm.
hormones are fluctuating enormously. They go up higher, even
Yeah.
sometimes than they do in early stages of having periods when you're in your sort of teenage years. So you can feel very dysregulated.
Correct.
And I just think you can feel awful. But
Yep.
what we know is that when your estrogen starts to reduce, it can really have quite a big impact on your feelings of hunger. And we know that many women will experience increased hunger and also reduced satiety. So you won't feel so full, you won't feel so replenished after a meal, and you may not even know that that's what's going on. So if you're somebody who can has always in your adulthood relied on your appetite as a key indicator of whether you're full, as a reason to stop eating, then suddenly that signal is potentially going to be impacted by a reduction in estrogen.
Hmm.
And so we also know that your appetite control center will be impacted as well. So this is problematical in the extreme. We also know that one of the things that will happen when our estrogen reduces is that our muscle mass can reduce. So also our body composition can change. So that means that we might end up with a slightly higher percentage of fat mass rather than the sort of redistribution of our body composition. And when that changes, when we have less muscle and more fat, that means we're less metabolically active. I know that's a really weird thing to be thinking about, but it means that we have less calories to play with because we don't need so many calories to maintain our weight.
Mm,
So not only is our hunger being impacted, but actually our need for calories can be affected just by the changes and the shift in our hormones. So we know that this is massively impactful on people's weight because if you just carry on as you've always carried on,
mm,
and all of these physiological changes are going on silently in the background, well, not so silently because we have lots of horrible symptoms, but we don't really know the impact on our appetite, then it can be really problematical. And we also know that one of the things that can happen during this whole process of all of these hormones changing is that we can become less sensitive to insulin. So we become much more at risk of a loss of insulin sensitivity, more at risk of insulin resistance. And we can end up with a sort of shift in our ability to tolerate certain foods, really. It is a really interesting time.
it
One of
is.
the things that happens with that whole loss of muscle mass, the slower metabolism, the loss of insulin sensitivity, is we'll also have an element of fat redistribution. So it might be that even though on the scales you're pretty much the same weight as you were pre-perimenopause or pre-menopause, your body fat distribution might have changed, which will mean that you're at greater risk of insulin resistance and all of those sort of metabolic health conditions like type 2 diabetes and being sort of carrying that sort of pear shape, the apple shape,
Mm,
where you're sort of like a little bit sort of wider around the middle. So we know all of these things happen. We know that ghrelin, our hunger hormone, um, sort of we become less sensitive, we have that increased appetite. So all in all, this is a really key challenging time. We're going to talk a little bit about stress in a minute, but one of the things that happens
Mm.
when we are in this phase of life is that we need to manage our stress hormones really well, because one of the things our adrenal glands can do is they can produce a little bit of estrogen type of hormone called estrogen. It's a much less rich estrogen. It's a less potent form of estrogen, but we will produce that from our adrenal glands. So actually managing stress and all of the factors around stress becomes ultimately important. Interestingly, we've got a whole webinar next week on stress management.
Oh, that's good.
I think I might have set it up to time it because it just makes sense. And Sam is here and she is a bit of a stress guru. So she's going to be
Oh,
joining me for that.
perfect. That's something that I think I'll join that too.
Yes, please. Do.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Great.
So, I mean, you've mentioned all the important bits already, Ruth. I'm just going to touch up on what you've already said, but the decline in estrogen, like you said, it's not necessary that you put on weight, it's that distribution of fat. So from your thighs and your hips to your waist and that horrible middle area that you've mentioned. And it can creep up quite quickly. You know that you've got a bit of a middle, but suddenly it just starts getting a little bit bigger and bigger and it's a bit out of control. And a lot of women who carry on with their exercise regimes, there's women who are very fit and active and have been throughout most of their life start feeling that it's not working anymore, or that middle bit is just not shifting. And like you said, we have to start doing things differently as we age. Unfortunately, we can't be doing the things that we used to do before, including the exercise regimes and our diet, which we are going to go into. But visceral fat is that middle bit, which is stored fat deep inside that abdomen, and it surrounds the liver and it surrounds your intestines and other organs as well. And normally, this makes up about 5 to 8% of body fat, but during the menopause, this actually increases to 15 to 20% of body fat, which is quite a big jump. Um, this also means you're at risk of weight gain because there's something called the BMR, or basal metabolic rate. So this is the rate at which you burn fat at rest, which starts dropping as well. And you've mentioned, Ruth, that if you're more apple shaped than pear shaped, that means that you have got visceral fat. So that's a good indication as well. Actually, I might go that and check that out in the mirror later to see. I hope I'm not another shape like a plum or something. There's no other fruits that we can add, can we?
That would be really funny, wouldn't it? The
That would be.
plum. Which fruit are you?
Which fruit are you? That's a good one
Yeah, that is a
yeah,
good one. Yeah.
yeah,
There's some really, thank you so much to the people who are sharing their experiences in the chat box. I think it's really powerful to hear from other women.
yeah.
And Neela, obviously what you were saying about that loss of confidence and putting petrol really resonated with you. Um, and yeah, really sorry.
Oh
People have
gosh,
had
yeah.
some really, really challenging times.
Yeah, these are real life stories. I mean, this is how
Yeah.
women feel, and I think it's really important that they get heard. And if you have to say something like that to whoever you're going to go and see for your symptoms, say it. Tell them how you're feeling. It's really important that you address that.
I think the audio is still working. Somebody's saying she can't hear us at the moment. So if you can hear, can you just give us a thumbs up, please? Otherwise, we're going to need to check our technical. Thank you so much for letting us know. So Abby, I think it might be your Raman. If you could put a note to Abby and just tell her it is her
Mhm.
computer or phone or whatever that is causing the issues for her, it'd be great. So, other factors that can lead to weight gain, because we know this is such an important area to consider, we'll just think about. So, for many women, we know that the menopausal phase, perimenopause, menopause, is very linked to sleep difficulties and night sweats and hot flashes. And what we know from the research looking about the impact of poor sleep on weight management is that for anyone, male or female, getting less than 5 hours of sleep a night regularly can contribute to weight gain. So this is really a
Mm.
key concern. I think this is something we all need to be putting some attention into. Ideally, and this might make you all laugh, and we're certainly not saying it to make you feel bad, but we should all be aiming for 6 to 9 hours. And actually, for me, this is definitely an area of massive weakness I need to be working on. I said that last week, and I haven't improved this week, so I
I
really
think you
need
said
to.
it last year as well to me, yeah.
It's yeah, sorry, right, okay, point taken. I've had my slap. I'm going to improve. Also, stress is a real factor. So, chronic long-term stress, so the sort of like niggling everyday stress that many of us are dealing with, or even that short-term, really high-level stress. And a few people are really talking about this in the chat box. So, thank you so much for sharing your stories. We know that that sort of element of stress can lead to an increase in our cortisol levels initially. That can be that sort of like cortisol can rise in response to stress when it's short term, which that can then lower our progesterone levels, and that can lead us to, even though we're having declining levels of estrogen, it means that the sort of balance of progesterone and estrogen changes, so we can become estrogen dominant. That's a really key issue that can happen as well. And estrogen dominance can lead to weight gain. Somebody's asked about cortisol testing. So
Mm,
that is something you can do. Some GPs will offer it with a blood test that will look at your free cortisol level. You can also look at your cortisol levels a couple of other ways through functional practitioners, like myself, or there are a whole host of other people who would do this for you. And that would be looking at an adrenal stress profile, or also we can look at that through a dried urine test. You would only do that if there really were a clear indication that somebody needed that, because people have to spend money for these, but it can give you that inside of you. And I think those additional functional laboratory tests seem to give you a bit more of an overview and a sort of awareness of sensitivity of the sort of cortisol through the day. Whereas, obviously a one-off blood test is just a here and now. Um, I'm not going to go into that in any more detail, but it's a really complex thing to be looking at. So you would only be wanting that with really good reason, I think. We can also, as I was saying earlier, become a little bit less responsive to insulin as our estrogen levels reduce. And we know that insulin is quite a protective hormone for metabolic health. So we know that we are at greater risk of insulin resistance when we have more insulin resistance. We're much more likely to be hungrier. We're much more likely to suffer with energy issues. So people were saying that one of the things they wanted to improve from this
mm,
sort of menopause poll earlier was their energy. So this may be a really key factor for you. Weight gain is a really key component of insulin resistance as well. So we know that these are really key things that you may be experiencing. And some people will notice that they're weeing more, especially at night. So again, that can be a key sign of something going on in terms of your blood sugar management and your insulin levels. So really worth just keeping an eye on what's going on for you. Yeah. And then
good.
thyroid health. Are you good to talk about thyroid health, or would you like me to,
Oh,
Rita?
you're the expert. You go ahead.
I'm no expert, but I don't have a thyroid, so I've spent a bit of time looking at thyroid for personal and professional reasons. So we know that for women, we are at a much greater risk of thyroid imbalances than men. Men can have thyroid imbalances, but it's much less likely to happen as regularly. During menopause, also that fluctuation in estrogen has been found to, in some women, trigger a change in their gut microbiome, and that can be then linked to the sort of development of autoimmune conditions. So it is quite common, or not uncommon, for women to be diagnosed with an underactive thyroid. And interestingly, there are many overlapping symptoms between poor, sort of like feeling like you're really struggling in that sort of perimenopause, menopause period, to having an underactive thyroid. So things like weight gain, fatigue, mood swings, brain fog, constipation for some ladies can be really, really key
Yeah.
symptoms of poor thyroid function, or a sort of reducing thyroid function.
Yep.
And it's a really key thing to be thinking about, and perhaps something that we don't always in primary care jump to thinking about because you're presenting with obvious times of hormonal imbalance. So we're thinking perimenopause, menopause. We don't always take the next step and think, what's going on with the thyroid? But if
That's
you're
right.
really, really struggling, Rupa, would you agree to lose weight, or if you're really struggling with those symptoms, despite taking some supportive medication to really manage your hormones,
Hmm.
or you're doing lots of things right in terms of your nutrition and lifestyle,
Hmm.
then it's worth just looking outside the box and thinking, okay, what's going on? Is my thyroid the factor here that's making the difference? And we know
Correct.
that, actually that unrecognized thyroid dysfunction can cause all sorts of issues like bone fractures, osteoporosis or osteopenia, um, issues with our mood and low mood, issues with heart disease. And that is a real key area for women at this stage of life for us to start paying attention to what's going on in our wider health issues. So lots we can be thinking about, lots that you can be signposted towards if you want to be thinking about your thyroid. It's really worth just thinking, is that relevant to me? I think it's a key area, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. We have a lot of women who have low th thyroid levels that are on HRT. But like you said, there's no harm in trying HRT first, if you haven't been diagnosed with the condition at all. And
Yeah.
if you find that, eventually after about 6 months, you're still not finding any improvement in your symptoms, we do always advise that you do go and get your thyroid checked and other bloods that might be contributing to the poor response. So,
Yeah, and the other thing, I think there's a massive link as well between stress and obviously going through the menopause, perimenopause can be really stressful. You could have higher levels of cortisol.
yep.
One of the things that cortisol will do is it will shift your ability to convert your inactive thyroid hormone to your active thyroid hormone. So,
Ah,
it's a big pattern here that everything sets up a little bit, it's a little bit harder to
yep.
keep feeling great.
Absolutely, and cortisol is something that is something that we all have, and we all ex we produce, and it's one of the stress hormones, along with adrenaline, that is known as fight or flight hormones. Um, so when you're particularly chronically stressed out, these are released, and what they do is when you go into survival mode, the levels are increased. And what happens to your body is you get an increased heart rate, you get increased blood pressure and sugar levels. So it's basically chaotic in your body. And Ruth has mentioned that it's so, so important. We talk about it all the time, but it's really important to control these stress levels. People are very busy. They don't have time to do much, let alone care for themselves. But we always encourage women that self-care is very important. Stress of everyday living and routine is one thing, but then there's emotional stress that a lot of women carry as well, busy being mums and wives and whatever roles that you've got, balancing everything out. But that self-care is so important because you've got all of these other hormones working in the background that are not helping you either. So please try to get that self-care into your routine. We also have testosterone that Ruth has mentioned, which is known as a male hormone, but it is quite important in women as well. So when that testosterone level drops, it affects your body composition, leading to less body mass, sorry, less muscle mass and higher fat mass. So you're likely to put on more weight in that way as well.
Yeah. It's
Lots
not,
of things. There's lots of things. It's not just one thing. There's lots of different factors.
yeah.
And I always tell women that when they do go on HRT, HRT is a very small component which starts balancing your hormones out. But what you've got to do is have a major role in yourself and your self-care and your lifestyle. It's not just about the HRT.
Yeah. It's really important, isn't it?
Mm,
Sorry, all a lot to be thinking about. So yes, I just wanted to raise the whole gut issue. We're in the middle, or I'm in the middle of creating a whole webinar about the gut microbiome and weight
yeah.
management because it's such an excitingly interesting area that we can do so much about from a lifestyle perspective.
Mm.
So I just think that's coming up hopefully in March time.
Oh, that'll
Hope
be good.
some
Oh,
end of
great.
March, maybe April. I'm not sure,
Good.
somewhere around then. So that would be great. But yeah, imbalances in our gut microbiome. Who knew? massive link between our gut microbiome and obesity, and I'll be exploring that in more detail, as I said. But I think we also know that estrogen plays a huge role in our gut barrier function. So we have a gut mucosa. If you think about your skin or the inside of your mouth, that inside of your mouth continues similarly all through your gut. And actually maintaining that integrity can really help in terms of tolerance, because we know women can lose a lot of tolerance to certain foods during menopause. That can really change your gut microbiome, can be really impacted by hormones as well, both the sort of ones that are lowering and the ones that we give ourselves to make ourselves feel better. So we need to be really thinking about how we look after our guts through this massive transitions phase. So let's have a think about that.
Oh, yes, the jigsaw puzzle. I think we've mentioned already the aspects of this sleep being very, very vital. What you eat. We're going to be mentioning a few other things that might help you with your hormones a bit later on. Stress management, can't emphasize that enough. Um, and activity. So I will be talking about the main areas of the body to work on and what you could do to get you going and moving a bit more if you're not already.
Yeah, it's really important. So let's have a little think about food,
Mm,
because I think this is a really something we can do. We have an opportunity every time we eat to help ourselves. And I think we forget that. We sort of forget that sort of inherent impact of, okay, we're not a car, but if you put the wrong fuel in your car doesn't work
mm.
very well. And
I
we're
like that. Yeah.
just like a car, really. If we put the wrong fuel in ourselves, we can feel worse than we did. We can feel great. We have the opportunity every time something goes in our mouth to make ourselves feel that little bit better. So, interestingly enough, we looked at the research from the Women's Health Survey that told us, what did it tell us? That, these are the type of recommendations that can really make a difference at this stage of life. Protein. We talk about protein, I think, probably in every webinar. If you've ever
Mhm,
been to any, you'll probably know this.
mhm,
But interestingly enough, in perimenopause and menopause, protein becomes even more important than it did the rest of your life. And actually, that importance continues. I read a really interesting piece of research the other day that demonstrated that good intakes or high intake of protein can really help in terms of our antioxidant production of a really important antioxidant called glutathione, which is very anti-inflammatory and a really important antioxidant in later life. And we don't make that so easily as we get older. Everything, all of our systems sort of don't work quite so efficiently as they used to. I think it's really important to be thinking about that and what we need to prop ourselves up. So in menopause, there is a suggestion that we need to up that protein even further to around 1 to 1.1 grams per kilogram of your current body weight. So that's how you are now. And your minimum would be around 0.85 per gram per kilogram of body weight. So this is a really important fact to hold on to. You would calculate your requirements and you would break that down and eat that across the day. So not all in one go. You want it over those 2 or 3 meals. Healthy fats are really important in terms of helping with insulin sensitivity and your cellular communication. So we want to be eating healthy fats in moderation. It doesn't have to be huge amounts. Again, it sort of very much replicates a Mediterranean diet, the Mediterranean style of eating, where we're eating lots of colorful vegetables. We want those healthy fats, and they're very anti-inflammatory. And they're something that are often missed. We've been brought up in a slightly scared of fat in our diet type of viewpoint, I would say. So people are a little nervous of fats, but we're beginning to know more and more how important they are.
mm,
In terms of that protein, you want to make sure that you're eating vegetarian sources of protein as well as animal sources of protein. You want to be mixing it up as much as possible. And you really want that fiber. Fiber can really help in terms of your gut health. It feeds all of those important elements in our gut. We'll go into those in a much more detail, but it feeds those beneficial bacteria in our gut. It feeds the elements in our gut that help to reduce inflammation in our gut, really important. And also, fiber is really important for making us feel fuller. So, really, if you're struggling with appetite regulation, really make sure you're getting your fibrous foods in terms of vegetables. And really, you could go up to 7 or more portions of veg in a day very happily
Mm,
without it being a problem. So really need to be
excellent.
thinking about that. I think
Yep.
it's just utterly important, and it isn't complicated. We just need to be thinking about it a little bit more. Yeah, we've talked a bit about healthy fats. So is there anything else you want to say about healthy fats, Rupa?
No, I think they're really important to be incorporated into the diet, just for overall health as well.
Yeah.
Especially omega-3s. Fish oils are very good. You can get supplements as well, which we always used to suggest in pharmacies when back in the day when I was standing in a pharmacy. But yeah, no, I think they're really important for overall health as well.
Yeah, and some really interesting research that is suggesting that it can really help with memory
Mm,
and
yeah,
cognitive function. So if you're struggling with brain fog or memory, really think, okay, where are my healthy fats coming from? Can I add in some olive oil? Can I add in some olives, some nuts, some
yeah,
seeds? Where we every day, where is my healthy fat come from? Can I eat oily fish a little bit more? What can I do to really prop myself up and help myself? And I think again, it's sort of just having that conscious awareness, isn't it, of what can make a
yeah,
difference.
yeah. Absolutely. And phytoestrogens is something else that we can talk about, provide a bit of information on. So, phytoestrogens are chemicals that are found in certain plant foods. But the advantage of these phytoestrogens is that they mimic the structure of the hormone estrogen. So if you're adding this to your diet, you're going to perhaps find some balance with your hormones and improvement with some symptoms because what they do is they attach themselves to the estrogen receptors in the body, and then hopefully provide some sort of balance of those hormones. So examples of these phytoestrogens that you could incorporate in your diet is soya products like tofu, flax seeds, sesame seeds, and tahini. Chickpeas as well is another good one, which we encourage. But phytoestrogens can help with the body fat distribution again and hopefully maintain and manage that weight during the menopause. So something definitely to consider.
Definitely worth considering. And then you're going to talk a little bit about activity because this is crucially important, isn't it,
Oh,
Rupa?
yes, yes. This is what's known as the non-negotiable during the perimenopause and menopause, right? This is something that we have to do. And I'm one of those women that it doesn't like keeping active. So it's so bad for me to actually start incorporating this. There's women who are very active and there's women who struggle like me. But there's hopefully things that everyone can do to get yourself more active and moving more. Um, so, yep, as Ruth said, crucial, non-negotiable physical activity. We can't be doing the things that we used to do before. We have to start changing our ways, changing the way we move, and doing it more often. And it's pretty obvious the advantages of physical activity, preventing weight gain and that middle area as well. But it also helps with your heart health. It helps with your bone health. It encourages better sleep and improves your mood and your mental stamina itself. So there's something called strength training, which helps build new muscle and helps to increase that metabolic rate. And examples of strength training include things like squats, so doing squats and bicep curls and ankle taps. And it's recommended that you do these kind of exercises at least 2 to 3 times in the week, on have non-consecutive days of doing it because you allow your muscles to relax in between. Then you've got cardio or aerobic exercise, so anything that keeps your heart pumping. So examples of that is walking, cycling, running, dancing, swimming. You could join a lovely dancing class if you wanted to make it more exciting, and that's a way of meeting new people as well. So your social aspect can improve in that way. Um, Lots of different ways that you could be doing aerobic and cardio workouts, and it's recommended that you do 150 minutes in the week, which is about half an hour, 5 days a week, which is probably manageable in most cases, especially as the weather is getting better now. There's no excuse. So try what works. And I think it's really important that you do things that you find fun and not forcing yourself, because if you're going to force yourself to do some of these exercises, it's not going to work. So you're kind of wasting your time. So try to do something that you find enjoyable, and maybe even get someone to do it with. So grab your neighbor or friend to go out for walks, join that class that I talked about, whatever it is that you find enjoyable. It's really important that you have fun with this as well, because then you will see the changes in yourself, in your mood and your body, believe it or not. It will have an impact on that. We also think that restorative exercise is really important. So yoga, Pilates is really important. That helps tone your body and also relaxes the mind as well. And it helps nurture those muscles while you're using them to strengthen the muscle mass and its strength.
Yeah, very much. So our last slide is a little bit about intermittent fasting. And so we are going to be coming to the end of the slideshow and coming to your questions in a minute. But one of the things that can help, not relevant for everyone who's here, if you're taking a weight loss medication, this might not be relevant for you, but the webinars are designed for anyone, not just for people who are taking medications. So we know that alternate day fasting can be helpful in terms of menopausal weight gain. The other thing that you can consider is a sort of time restricted eating where you're eating within a timed window. There's
Yeah.
lots of really random advice going on about when you should fast, when you shouldn't fast, how long you should fast for. Somebody was asking me the other day about 3-day water fasts. We're not
Oh.
talking about anything like that. We're talking about something like closing your fridge at 7 o'clock in the evening and not
Mm,
opening it again till 7 o'clock the next morning.
mhm,
Really simple. A 12-hour overnight window where you're not eating can really make a difference. And if you're managing that absolutely fine, your energy feeling feels good, then you could stretch that a little bit further to 14 hours with no eating. Just see how you are. We're not wanting you to be hungry. And we also don't want you to be restricting yourself so much that the next minute you're overeating to compensate for, feeling as if you're going without. That's not what we're talking about here. So
mm.
it's worth playing with all of these concepts and seeing what happens for you. And just to let you know, we've got a couple of webinars coming up on the 10th of March. We're talking about stress management and why that's such an important element for weight management. And then we're going to be diving all into sleep and how to sleep more successfully and sharing our sort of researched evidence-based information around how these things are so important and what we can do to help ourselves. So
Excellent.
thank you, Rupa. Let's see what
Brilliant.
questions we have.
Right, we've got Joe's asking, I would like to know if the lower menopause fat tummy will go away with diet and now on HRT. There's a lot of misconception about HRT causing weight gain. And to be honest, there's no sufficient evidence to say that it does cause weight gain. Um, what it does is it can initially, when you first start using it, it can cause water retention and a bit of bloating. So those symptoms tend to subside over time. And it can, every woman's different, everyone reacts differently to it. So um, it's just worth being patient and just seeing how you go. Ruth's talked about the diet aspect of it and keeping fit. So just keep to that healthy regime and just monitor your progress.
Yeah. Very much so. Somebody is saying that they've had a hysterectomy and they also are unable to take HRT because they've
Mhm.
got a history of breast
Yeah,
cancer.
yeah,
So that's, I'm sorry to hear that. What can you do?
yeah,
That is a really complex question.
it is.
Rupert, do you want to dive in about HRT?
Yeah, it is HRT is something that is probably not going to be suitable for you, but speak to your doctor because there are alternatives. And thankfully, there are studies being done on different treatments that are hopefully coming out soon on that have been done on breast women with a history of breast cancer. So, we're looking forward to those
Yeah.
medications coming out soon eventually. Yeah.
But from a health perspective and from an eating perspective, then all of the things that we've talked about today, and Raman, I don't know if you can share the link to the YouTube re-records or the recordings of previous webinars because the how to eat and the what to eat webinars would be really worth tuning into. They're really relevant for you to sort of be thinking about that as a structure for how to eat, and also maybe a link to our eating guides would be really helpful to share too. There are people who specialize in that type of area in a sort of functional health point of view. So they may be worth linking into and just seeing. There are lots of people who give free advice as well. So it doesn't have to be paid for, but you want to be going for really reputable people. And it's
Absolutely.
it's a really challenging point for you, but there is a lot you can do just with your food
Mhm.
and also with moving, making sure you're doing a little bit of resistance work, really looking after your bones is really important. So yeah, hopefully that is helpful.
Excellent. There's
Somebody's
another.
asking how long it's safe to take HRT for.
Yeah. So nowadays, there's no upper age limit or time period where you need to stop HRT. What's important is, I know this lady's been on it for 23 years. What's important is as time goes on, as you reach you've gone past 5 years, you just get your checks done, your blood pressure check, your cervical screening, your breast screening. That's all up to date. And what happens is normally as a woman ages, we look at the product that she's using, whether it's safe to use. So a lot of these products now, HRT products, are being used through the skin, so that's better as you age. Um, just talk to your healthcare professional and make sure that all those checks are always done. And the review of your medication, your HRT is very important as well. But there is no age limit anymore, as long as women understand yes, there may be increases to breast cancer as you age anyway without HRT, but if you're feeling better on it and you're doing well on it, there's no reason why you can't continue.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Yeah, it's really interesting how that's changed, isn't it?
It has.
Somebody is asking about do we need to eat differently in menopause? I would say yes. You need to really, really be not overdoing it in terms of those grains and breads and starchy carbohydrates. They need to be the smaller proportion of your meals and also maybe use them as something that you have when you are active rather than all of the time. Because I think your wriggle room for them has changed because your body composition will have changed because of the menopause, let alone if you've gone through some sort of surgical sort of propelling you into the menopause. That's going to be a big shift in what's
Yeah.
going on in your body. So, really focus on those healthy fats, really focus on the protein and lots of colorful vegetables. Those
Hmm.
are your key things. Make sure you're eating sort of two or three good quality meals like that balanced plate every day. That and just don't give yourself the wriggle room or the excuses. And then the sweet treats need to become sweet treats rather than an everyday occurrence. Because again, because you've got a shift in your insulin sensitivity, a shift in your body composition, you won't have the wriggle room to get
Hmm.
away with you said it eloquently, Rupa. We have to change
We
because
have
actually
to.
what we've always done no longer works. And I absolutely know this to be true. So you have to just really wake up and smell the coffee, I think, to be fair,
Yeah.
and just do it slightly differently. And then you'll win and you'll feel so much better. I think that's the point. This isn't about beating ourselves up. It's just about what can I do every day to make myself feel better. And I think we forget that we've got that power a little bit more than we think at our fingertips.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think is a dry urine test better than a hair sample test? If
Um,
you'd know that.
I would say, in my experience, from when I have looked at the research around those things, and we're not here really to talk about those today, but yes, the dried urine test, it's called a Dutch test. It's a really complicated
Mm.
test. Um, really interesting and can really help in terms of just understanding what's going on from a sort of like very more sort of specific element of looking at things. Very
Mhm.
complicated. I wouldn't recommend it for many people. It's more money than you necessarily
Right.
need to spend, but if you're struggling and really having problems,
Yeah,
it may be worth considering.
good.
Yeah,
Somebody wants to know the repeat of the names of the phytoestrogen rich foods. Yeah. So there's soy products like tofu, flax seeds, sesame seeds, tahini, and chickpeas. Flax seeds is a good one to incorporate quite quickly, isn't it, Ruth? You can sprinkle some
really
in your
simple.
cereal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Or a bowl of
very much so.
fruit. Yeah.
Yeah. And also things like edamame beans, they're really great.
Oh,
And
yeah.
also like sprouted things. So
Uh-huh.
they're also really worth considering. Somebody's saying they've got an intolerance to soy, wheat, and milk products, particularly the protein and whey. What products could you use for phytoestrogens? So things like Hmm. So your soy would necessarily then cut out the tofu and the edamame beans.
Okay.
So you could be thinking about the chickpeas, sprouting chickpeas and lentils will have a little bit of soy isoflavones in, or no, not soy, isoflavones. So they would be suitable. Um, and then protein, just your other proteins that you would normally eat, just to make sure you're boosting up that protein element as well. Yeah,
Good. Good.
good.
I think I'm
We
looking through the
have
chat box just to see if there's any. Um,
so somebody's saying that they're fasting from 8:30 to 8:30. There you go, and watching calories, and that's
oh,
finding it
that's
really
brilliant.
helpful. So
That's
that's
good.
great to hear. Yeah, really good. And it just
Good.
shows, doesn't it? It doesn't have to be massively extended
Mm.
fasts. Somebody's saying they're struggling to eat enough protein on a vegetarian or a vegan diet. No, must be vegetarian because you're eating Greek yogurt.
Oh,
And lentils, soups, chickpea curries. You may want to be thinking about whether you need to be using some sort of protein isolate to support the amount of protein that you're getting. The research is that it can help to at least boost your protein intake, and that might help in terms of your sort of day-to-day energy and concentration and insulin sensitivity. So all of those things. So you can get some over the counter. You want to be looking at the ingredients list to make sure there's as less ingredients as possible, but you can get pea proteins and different proteins as well. So it might be worth considering.
excellent. I've just put in a link in the chat box as well, just for the menopause questionnaire, if
Oh,
anybody wants to
brilliant.
take that as
Thank you.
well. That's a really important tool to not only take, like I said, to your doctor or whoever you're seeing about your symptoms, but also if you are on HRT, monitoring your symptoms. So look at what you have before you start, and then look at your progress. You'll see it on the actual questionnaire. You can rate your symptoms. So it's a really good tool to be using to see if you're improving or not in certain symptoms. So definitely use that.
Yeah. Somebody's saying that, so Michelle, I don't know if you're still here, but you obviously had quite a challenging time getting your hormones managed again, but it's taken a couple of years and you're now sort of
Oh,
getting where you
yeah.
needed to be.
Hmm.
That's a long time, isn't it? It's a long time of feeling really grotty before
It
you
is.
begin to
It
feel
is.
better.
It really is. And there's someone else who's mentioned about her symptoms. She was 47, and her GP told her she was too young to be going through, I assume, the menopause and the perimenopause. It's a shame, isn't it? We shouldn't be at that stage. Not now. So hopefully, this is where I'm saying that, healthcare professionals are being more trained and educated on this. We need to.
Yeah, very much so. I've reshared the link for that menopause symptom checker with everyone. So hopefully you
Okay.
should get
All
that
right.
now.
Okay.
I think you shared it to us, to the hosts.
Oh no. Oh gosh. Yeah, I didn't change the
Yeah,
tab. Whoops, sorry. Thank you, Ruth, for
that's
resending that one.
okay. All is good. Right. So I think we are now towards the end of your questions. So we will
Yeah.
be back next week. And a huge thank you to you, Rupert,
Oh, thank
for
you.
sharing your amazingness and knowledge with us. And I just think hearing people's stories, it's just, yeah, it's sort of like upsetting, but also reassuring, isn't it? It's sort of like that
Yeah.
double-edged sword
Hmm.
of actually knowing that other people have been through horrible experiences and they do come through the other side.
Absolutely. Definitely. No, it's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah,
I look forward to the next one.
brilliant. We'll be bringing you in. Don't you worry. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. Have a good week, everyone. And
Take care.
Raman, thanks for being here as well. Take
Brilliant.
care, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.